Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov has become so weakened that the Kremlin's propaganda machine has begun to attack him. Russian televisions have effectively accused him of separatism. Such public humiliation of the Chechen leader is impossible without Moscow's sanction. It is a black mark. Well-known Kremlin Z-propagandist Nadana Fridrikhson has publicly commented on Kadyrov's conflict with Russian MP and General Vladimir Shamanov. The Chechen leader recently accused the Russian legislator of war crimes during the Chechen War and began sending him to the so-called SVO to demonstrate his skills. The propagandist sided with Shamanov and humiliated Kadyrov. Shamanov's awards are soaked in sweat and blood. That's a fact. And what about Kadyrov? He has a whole gallery of medals, and what's their value? He awarded them to himself. Let's compare the biographies of Shamanov and Kadyrov. Fridrikhson stated, "This attack from a state-level propagandist was unprecedented. Previously, any conflicts with the Chechen leader had been carefully hushed up. Now, the Kremlin itself had effectively cast doubt on Kadyrov's past, recalling that he had fought in the Chechen War on the side of Dudayev and Basayev, men whom Moscow has long labeled terrorists." The scandal arose over the renaming of several towns and villages in Chechnya. The replacement of Russian names with Chechen ones sparked a storm of indignation among the far-right Z-patriots who accused Kadyrov of demonstrative contempt for Russian history. Shamanov, who fought in the Chechen Wars, was particularly vocal in his criticism. This public conflict marked a new milestone in the internal rift within Putin's system. It exposed the growing confrontation between the power elites and the ethnic groups the Kremlin itself had nurtured. Russia, immersed in militarism and xenophobia, is increasingly turning into a powder keg where ethnic and political tensions could explode at any moment. Recall, previously, media reported that Z-patriots clashed with Kadyrovites over a banknote. The dispute over which symbol should appear on the back of the banknote, Mount Elbrus or the Grozny city skyscraper complex, has escalated into a bitter standoff between Z-patriots and Kadyrov's supporters. After Kadyrovites and Z-patriots began aggressively manipulating votes, the Central Bank of Russia tightened the rules. Voting became available only to authorized users. This change sparked a storm of indignation in Chechnya, where they are convinced the rule change is aimed against them. Chechen Minister for National Policy Ahmed Dudayev publicly accused the central bank of manipulation. They see a surge in votes from Chechnya, and our supporters across the country were gaining ground. And then some platforms are immediately shut down. A video of this statement was distributed by the head of the Republic, Ramzan Kadyrov. In response to the situation, the head of Chechnya also complained about the bias of the vote, hinting that Moscow was dissatisfied with the high level of participation by the Republic's residents. Meanwhile, Z-patriots and nationalist bloggers are actively promoting a version featuring Mount Elbrus on the banknote. One far-right propagandist, Vladislav Pozniakov, reported that 40,000 votes allegedly suddenly disappeared from the Elbrus column. "They're just making up numbers for us." The Z-blogger was indignant, adding that he was allegedly offered $500,000 to stop campaigning for Elbrus.
China's Commerce Ministry on Sunday signaled that it would not back down in the face of a 100% tariff threat from President Donald Trump, urging the U.S. to resolve differences through negotiations instead of threats. According to Associated Press, the ministry issued a statement saying China has a consistent position on the tariff issue, that we do not want a tariff war but we are not afraid of one. Frequently resorting to the threat of high tariffs is not the correct way to get along with China, the Commerce Ministry said. It also called for addressing any concerns through dialogue. The response came 2 days after Trump threatened to jack up the tax on imports from China by November 1 in response to new Chinese restrictions on the export of rare earths, a key ingredient for many consumer and military products. The back and forth threatens to derail a possible meeting between Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping and end a truce in a tariff war in which new tariffs from both sides briefly topped 100% in April. Trump has raised taxes on imports from many U.S. trading partners this year, seeking to win concessions in return for tariff reductions. China has been one of the few countries that hasn't backed down, relying on its economic clout. Both sides accuse the other of violating the spirit of the truce by imposing new restrictions on trade. Trump said China is becoming very hostile, and that it's holding the world captive by restricting access to rare earth metals and magnets. China's new regulations require foreign companies to get special approval to export items that contain even small traces of rare earths elements sourced from China. These critical minerals are needed in a broad range of products, from jet engines, radar systems and electric vehicles to consumer electronics including laptops and phones. China accounts for nearly 70% of the world's rare earths mining and controls roughly 90% of global rare earths processing. Access to the material is a key point of contention in trade talks between Washington and Beijing. The ministry statement said the country had conducted a thorough assessment of the measures and is confident that it would inflict very limited impact on the global supply chain. Export licenses would be granted for legitimate civilian uses, noting that the minerals also have military applications, the ministry said. If the U.S. side obstinately insists on its practice, China will be sure to resolutely take corresponding measures to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests, it added.
China says it won't back down in the face of the latest tariff threat from U.S. President Donald Trump. A Commerce Ministry statement said that, while China doesn't want a tariff war, it isn't afraid of one. Trump has threatened to put a 100% tariff on Chinese imports. His threat came in response to an announcement recently by China that it would tighten control over the exports of rare earths. Now, these rare earths are really important materials. They go into all kinds of goods, including consumer electronics, jet engines, and automobiles. And China controls most of the mining and processing of these rare earths globally. The back and forth between the U.S. and China is threatening to undo a truce reached between them over trade. It also may undermine attempts to set up an upcoming meeting between Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping.